makes your food security very, very insecure. Not just from a disease point of view, which is what we're seeing right now with the spread of swine flu, because of the disgusting and inhumane ways that pigs are kept in terribly, terribly small spaces. And everybody knows, every kind of World Health expert knows that at some point some real pandemic will happen because of the way we treat animals, because of the way we just look at them and make them into just a sort of an industrial, somehow into an industrial cog, as though they are literally like producing another seafood. But the other big story of cheap food is, of course, also the story of cheap oil, because 95% of all the food we eat has oil in it. Indeed, practically everything in this room probably has oil in it. If you suck the oil out of this room, there will be almost nothing left. And it takes 10 calories of oil to produce 10 calories of oil to produce 1 calorie of food. And someone said to me the other day that, they reckoned in 40 years' time, something like iceberg lettuce, which comes from California, which okay, it's tasty, it's not very nice, but nevertheless it has no calories, will probably be as expensive and as exclusive as caviar is today, because nobody will be able to eat it because it's just not worth it. And we are very greedy buyers of very oil-intensive food, because ready meals are extremely oil-intensive, because food has travelled from lots of places to get made up in one thing. Britain at the moment eats over 49% of all the ready meals in Europe, and I think that Bonnie referred to the fact that I started spare rib, well, we're sort of slightly to blame there, because one of our mantras was don't time and don't cook, and you'll get head girls. And we all did stop cooking in a big way. Our one and only offer at spare rib was a dishcloth, and it said first you sink into his arms, then your arms end up in his sink. And that was how we saw it. But I mean, what it did mean was that over the 70s and the 80s, people kind of stopped cooking and started buying ready meals, and we got fat, and we got two-income households, and we got materialistic, and we got used to the idea that things got actually progressively cheaper, so that we could have more and more and more useless stuff. And let's finally get to today, where you can go to Primark and you can spend 20 quid and somehow end up with almost 20 garments. And if you think about it at all, you know what's at the end of that garment, and that is a pretty miserable person in a very unjust world to keep our insatiable materialistic habits happy. Which is why the food renaissance is so wonderful, because I think that it's one of the few, when you buy straight from a farm shop, straight from a farmer, straight from a grower, who grow it yourself, it's one of those completely honest purchases, and it makes your heart feel good, and it makes the circle right. But where have I got to know? I've lost slightly. But cheap food also, I think, has had another very big and nasty effect on our society, which is very, very fractured families. Monty Don, when he started his farm outside Hereford to try and help recovering drug addicts, and they kept a pig and they grew lots of vegetables, and they only had one kind of rule, which was, well, don't take drugs on the premises, but you eat meals together, one meal lunch every day. And he said that he found that only 3 of the kids, out of all of them, had ever had a meal at a table in their life. They'd all eaten pot noodles in their room, they'd all eaten pizzas in front of the telly, the whole family had split up, and nobody met. And I think that thing of having lost our connection to food has just had such a sort of huge breakdown on our society. And I'm just in the middle of reading Nicholas Layard's new book about childhood, and they talk about this such a lot in terms of the demographic, that where you find families where kids eat with their parents and talk to them, those families are resilient, and those children become resilient. And when you fracture it, and a lot of that fracturing happens around food, and I know people think it's kind of slightly mamby-pamby to talk about food in that sense, but actually I think it's very powerful, the idea that the kitchen is the heart of the home, and the cooking and sharing it together. So to me, it's incredibly thrilling to see this very big journey in food beginning. It's beginning all over the country, and it's really now beginning in London, in a place to say that people thought it wouldn't happen. But it's spreading, and it's a way of breeding our resilience. And I think now that we're on, in a way, the most exciting time of our lives, and the most exciting journey, and that the credit crunch is great news for us, because it's making people rethink what their values are. And it doesn't matter where you start on this journey, you just need, I think, to start. And if I look back on my own self, my own life, I mean, I've done all sorts of nutty things in my life. Some of them have been successful, and some of them have been complete disasters. But I did have a horrible car crash about 6 years ago. I broke my leg very, very badly, and I was on the crutches for 20 months. And I suddenly had to completely alter the way that I thought about my world. It was no longer getting lunchtime, when's this going to get better? And I started to garden, and I built a wood garden. And I remember, I couldn't actually do it myself, I had to get my husband to help, so I was on crutches, and you tend to fall over in wood on crutches. But I plant bulbs, and I think, well, when the bulbs come up, my leg will be better. And in fact, it took 2 seasons of bulbs, because it's a long time. But it was that change, and it was actually sort of having to say, don't have to live quite with the same speed. And it brought me also into the magic of seeing a very, very small seed go in the ground, and then a few weeks later, it's a plant, and a few weeks after that, it's giving you all this food. And I have to say, if you had to choose which was the more magical, that seed or whatever Nintendo or new Game Boy, that seed beats it every time, because it's just the most extraordinary thing. And once you turn children onto that, the lovely fact is that, according to John Curry at the NFU, 93% of kids who grow their primary school kids who get to grow their own food and then eat it, start to change their eating habits and start to get reconnected and start to say, gosh, what is this stuff? You know, this isn't just stuff that comes out of packets wrapped in plastic. This is amazing, and it is amazing, and we can do it. And the thing that I think I have learned lately is that the time for talking is over and the time for action has really arrived. And I was at a rally the other day, not the other day, it was back in November in Parliament, and it was in fact on the 100th years anniversary of the day that women first rushed Parliament to demand the vote. And there was a group of us women standing out there, and what we were saying this time was, okay, we've got the vote, but what we need is for women and Parliament to look after our planet for us, because if we want to hand it on to our great-grandchildren in the kind of shape that we inherited it, we have got to do something. And that it is not, we were celebrating, yes, the incredible bravery of our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and what they've achieved for someone like me, whose life has been entirely made by their bravery and what they managed to achieve. But we have to, if we want to go to our graves feeling not guilty, we have to act now, because at the end of the day, we've only got one home, and it's this planet Earth, and it's mothered us for a very long time, and it's time, I think, we mothered it. But this time, we need to mother it for everyone. It's not just for the rich and the powerful who want to get the vote. It has to be for the poor and the dispossessed and the hungry and the downtrodden, because actually no sustainable movement will ever work unless it's from the ground up, unless it takes everybody with it, and unless it captures everybody's hearts and souls and spirits. And when we were squashed against the walls of Westminster, we were chanting deeds, not words, and we kept it up for hours. And then, very oddly, but perhaps not so oddly, because, there are things there for coincidence, I was reading an essay about the day after by that very great American writer, who's a great favourite of mine, called Raymond Carver, who is probably the greatest short story writer in the world. He wrote a story about the prayer of St. Teresa of Avila, which was written 393 years ago. And she says, words lead to deeds, they prepare the soul, and they make it ready, and they move it to tenderness. And I think soul and tenderness are two things that are in pretty short supply nowadays. But the sentiment is as true now as it was then. And we should pay attention to the spirits of our words and the spirits of our deeds. So it's time for talk being over and action being on, because there is